Hi guys, Nick here with Miss Muffin. Last week I talked with you guys about four low light plants, so naturally I'm going to talk this week about some highlight plants. I'm going to go over three of them with you guys, and we're going to get started right now. Alright, so there are obviously so many different kinds of highlight plants out there, but we don't really talk about what kind of plants are suitable for highlight conditions. We're always talking about what kind of plants are good for low light. So I figured I would touch on a few plants that I have grown throughout my apartments with west-facing windows, south-facing windows that have just absolutely flourished for me during the growing season and don't burn, which is most important because a lot of plants will burn when they get direct sunlight. I would say most of these plants don't handle like hours and hours of direct sunlight like herbs like very well, but when it comes to just a few hours a day, they really seem to like it, and I've never had a problem. I've only had good luck. So first off, I'm going to talk about one that is very popular seen outdoors, not so much indoors, and that is a croton. So crotons are beautiful, beautiful plants. You can see the foliage. I don't get that much light in my apartment right now, so some of the new growth isn't as colorful as it was before, but nonetheless, still growing pretty well. Crotons are known for their striking colors and patterns on their leaves. So they come in bright green. You can actually see some new leaves coming in right here. And they'll come in bright green, and over time they'll start to get some yellow variegation, and then they'll turn red, depending on the light amount of light it's getting. And the more light it gets, the more yellows and reds it gets in its leaves. There are so many different kinds of crotons out there. Another one that I have is this gold dust croton. I showed it in a recent video, and it is just very striking with its beautiful little dots. I don't believe this one would get the red colors. It might. I've never seen them with red, but yeah. One thing about crotons that I absolutely love is they show you when they need to be watered. And when I say this, their leaves will start to wilt, similar to like a peace lily, but peace lilies are super hard to grow, in my opinion. But they wilt, and it's just telling me, hey, water me, which is great because it's not gonna brown on you, it's not gonna lose leaves, it's just gonna slightly wilt and say, hey, I think it's time that I need a little bit of water. And they seem to need water about once every week in the growing season. In the winter, more so about once every 2 weeks. It all depends on about how much light you're giving it. Mine doesn't get very much light right now, and therefore it gets watered about every 12 to 14 days. And another thing is they are really susceptible to spider mites. That's the only thing I'd say I'd look out for. I don't know if it's a humidity thing. I don't know if they just like them. I do run a humidifier in my home, but it still seems every once or twice a year I'll find a few spider mites on it. Maybe there's a leaf that's got it pretty bad. I just spray it with neem oil, or I do the soap and the alcohol and the water, and it just gets rid of them. But like I said, it's always something that comes back. Never destroys the plant, but always find them every now and again. Actually, I had two crotons at my work, the bar that I work at, and they died from spider mite damage, but I will say I don't pay as much close attention to the plants at work than I do at home. But nonetheless, crotons are really awesome to grow and highlight. They have, like I said, really striking foliage, and there's so many different kinds. There's like the banana croton, which is like thin, long leaves, and there's ones that have little like feathery leaves. Oh, there's so many different kinds, and I highly recommend, if you have the light, to pick one up. Alright, next up we're going to talk about philodendron. Philodendron are super popular houseplants. There are so many different kinds of philodendron. You cannot go into your garden center without seeing at least a few of these guys. But to me, philodendron are a little bit more of a challenge. They seem to like this sweet spot in between bright and direct lighting that can be a little bit tough to find, and until you find it, it can be a little bit easy to overwater them and get a few leaves that fall off. But I will say, once you get them in the right conditions, they flourish. And when I say flourish, I don't mean they grow inches, I mean they grow like feet a growing season. Like my other Philodendron Brazil grew maybe like 4 feet last year. It was crazy to watch, and it's gonna be fun to watch again this summer, as well as watch this little guy grow. As I said, they do like highlight, as all the other plants in this video do, and they do like a good watering, but they like to let them dry out, probably about 50%. And that's the thing, when they're not getting good light, they don't dry out as quickly and they just sit in water a little bit. So definitely be wary of that. Don't overwater it until you know that it's in the right light conditions. And some of them do prefer a little bit more humidity. Ones like this, with like less, the leaves are a little bit more thicker. They are fine in standard household humidity, but ones like Philodendron bipinnatifidum with a little bit more thinner leaves, they probably would benefit from an occasional spritz or humidifier in the room. But that being said, philodendron are a little bit more challenging than people might say, at least to me, but they are still very worth growing because they have such beautiful leaves and it's got a very tropical and lush feel. Alright, lastly we're going to talk about peperomia. This one with me right now is the Peperomia orba. Peperomia seem to be really gaining popularity over the past few years. There's so many different kinds, and that's what's pretty interesting about them, is they all look completely different. And they mostly stay small and compact. There are some that are trailing peperomia, like the Peperomia prostrata, but most of them do stay pretty small and compact, which is great because, you know, living in an apartment in the city, you don't have a lot of space, so it's nice to be able to put some more plants in places that most big ones wouldn't be able to fit. But they really do seem to like bright, indirect light. Some can handle a little bit of direct light, but too much would probably scorch leaves, but they do like to stay dry. But that being said, they do need to be watered, but maybe like once every week or two, depending on the amount of light it gets. They can definitely rot very easily if they're being watered too much and don't have enough light, as do other plants. But yeah, definitely err on underwatering. I've definitely said that in the past when talking about peperomium, but there are so many different kinds. A favorite of mine is this stilt peperomia right here. It's got such an awesome look to the leaves, and they're very succulent, which is very cool. You'll see these guys around. They've been definitely much more prevalent in the past year, I would say so. It's definitely, I think, if you can find a plant in Philadelphia, you can find it basically anywhere else because Philadelphia is not on the houseplant scene yet, so yes. But peperomia are awesome plants, very underrated, and definitely going to be seeing a lot more varieties when you go to your garden center. So I definitely recommend picking one up and putting them in a little corner where maybe another plant wouldn't fit. All that being said, there are so many different kinds of highlight houseplants out there, more so than low light, as you would expect with something that grows outside. But there are other ones I've talked about in the past, like Monstera and Tradescantia, that I still stand by. Very easy ones to grow. And also, obviously, cacti and succulents are perfect for those windows that get a little too much light that might scorch anything else. Definitely consider growing herbs as well. Not exactly a houseplant, but if you have the light, definitely do it, but be wary of bugs. We'll definitely talk about herbs in the future. But besides that, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.